Hello history buffs and welcome back to the channel. 1534 was a year that saw Anne Boleyn's life unravel in ways she could never have imagined. The woman who had once been the most powerful figure in England, captivating King Henry VIII and changing the course of history, found herself besieged by personal and political crises. In this episode, we're going to dive into why 1534 was the worst year of Anne Boleyn's life. A year marked by heartbreak, political intrigue, and the beginning of the end of her once seemingly unstoppable rise. Although I guess you could argue that 1536 was the worst year of her life. The year began with what should have been a triumph for Anne, the passing of the Act of Succession on the 23rd of March 1534. This act was monumental. It required all of Henry's subjects to recognise his marriage to Anne as legitimate, dismissing any claims by his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, and their daughter, Mary. For Anne, this was the validation of her position as queen, and a safeguard for any children she might bear, ensuring they would inherit the throne. The Act of Succession also marked a cruel blow to Mary Tudor, Catherine's daughter, whom Anne had grown to view as a significant threat. Mary was declared illegitimate, her position in the line of succession wiped away with a stroke of the pen. But this act did not just remove Mary from the line of succession. It also deepened the divisions within the English court, and among the people, many of whom still viewed Mary as the rightful heir, and Anne as an interloper, a usurper. Tragically, just months after this illegal triumph, Anne faced one of the most heartbreaking losses a mother can endure. In June 1534, she lost her second child. The child was born a month prematurely, and although the exact circumstances are unclear, it's believed that the baby was either stillborn or died shortly after birth. This devastating loss not only broke Anne's heart, but also severely undermined her position at court. For Henry, this was more than just a personal tragedy. It was a political disaster. The entire legitimacy of his marriage to Anne rested on her ability to produce a male heir. With this loss, Anne began to realise that she was losing her grip on the king's affections, and more dangerously, on her influence over him. The dream that had fueled her ascent to the throne was slipping away, one tragedy at a time. Despite the loss in June, Anne's hope was rekindled later in the year when she believed she was pregnant again. By September, however, these hopes were dashed. On the 23rd of September, Eustace Chapuis, the imperial ambassador and Anne's staunch opponent, reported that the lady is not to have a child after all. Whether Anne suffered a miscarriage or her pregnancy was a false alarm, the emotional toll was immense. With this second loss, Anne's despair deepened. She realised she was losing more than just her children. She was losing her influence, her power, and perhaps, most painfully, the love of her husband. Henry, who had once moved heaven and earth to marry her, was now increasingly distant, his attention wandering elsewhere. The court was abuzz with rumours, and Anne's enemies were beginning to circle. As if her own troubles weren't enough, the autumn of 1534 brought another blow to Anne's fragile state. Her sister, Mary Boleyn, returned to court, pregnant. Mary's marriage to William Stafford, a man of no great standing or wealth, was a love match, and it scandalised the court. For Anne, it was a bitter reminder of what she could, but didn't have. A marriage based on love and personal choice, and another baby on the way. Mary's return to court, glowing with the contentment of a woman in love, only heightened Anne's sense of failure. While Mary had married for love and seemed happy, Anne's own marriage was growing colder, and more strained by the day. And if that wasn't bad enough, Mary was the sister of the Queen. Her marriage to William Stafford and the pregnancy was humiliating and embarrassment to Anne. She was Queen, Mary was her sister. She should be getting Mary a high-ranking noble marriage. Mary should be used for political alliances, marriages that can help benefit her husband, the King, and England. And yet she went behind Anne's back and got married to a nobody. This was enough for Mary to be banished from court. And as far as we're aware, the sisters didn't see each other again, as Anne was executed only 2 years later. In the autumn of 1534, Anne's worst fears began to materialise. Henry, frustrated by Anne's inability to provide a male heir, and perhaps disillusioned with their marriage, started to pursue another woman. One such woman, whose identity remains a mystery to historians, was known simply as the Imperial Lady, due to her sympathies with the Holy Roman Emperor. This Imperial Lady was not just a romantic rival, but a political threat as well. Her presence at court signalled to Anne that Henry's affections were shifting and that she was no longer the sole object of his desire. The court was a dangerous place for a queen who could no longer captivate the king, and Anne knew it. Her influence, already weakened by her failed pregnancies, was now under direct assault from this new rival. Something that isn't brought up enough is the influence that mistresses could have on their lovers. We've already said she was known as the Imperial Lady because of her sympathies to the Holy Roman Empire, or Emperor, who was Catholic. Henry was already Catholic, but he was getting a little bit more Protestant, a little bit more Anglican, just so he could marry Anne. So the last thing that reformist Anne, or Protestant Anne, really wants right now is somebody who is a Catholic sympathiser whispering in her husband's ear. As Anne is trying to get Henry to make more Protestant reforms in the country, if he is having a Catholic sympathiser whisper in his ear, then the Imperial Lady could be working against Anne and her objectives. And as if the year hadn't been cruel enough, in the winter of 1534, Anne suffered a personal loss that, while seemingly small, struck her deeply. Her beloved dog, Percoy, died. Percoy had been a gift from Lady Lisle, and Anne adored him. The court, aware of how much the little dog meant to her, was hesitant to break the news. In the end, it was Henry who told her, showing a rare moment of tenderness in an otherwise strained relationship. For Anne, Percoy's death was a small but painful reminder of the mounting losses she had already endured throughout the year. She was a great lover of animals, and this loss, though minor in the grand scheme of things, added to her growing sense of isolation and despair. 1534 had brought her not only the loss of 2 pregnancies, but also the loss of her influence, her husband's love, and even the small comforts that had once brought her joy. Her sister's happiness, Henry's wandering eye, and the cruel death of her beloved dog all served as reminders that her life, once so full of promise, was unravelling at an alarming pace. 1534 was the year that marks the beginning of the end for Anne Boleyn. The cracks in her once seemingly unbreakable position were widening, and the forces that would eventually lead to her downfall were gathering strength. The year had tested her in many ways she could have never anticipated, leaving her vulnerable and increasingly isolated. Anne Boleyn's story did not end in 1534, but the events of that year set the stage. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you did, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I upload new videos every Monday, and I do On This Day in History on Fridays. But until the next one, have a wonderful day. Bye!